So, welcome to part three of all things CRM. In our last part, we were talking more about the implementation and adoption and some of the do's and don'ts with regards to having that CRM fully on board. And that followed on from part one, which is the whole process of starting to, identify what processes you need to change, what you need to do as a business before you even bring CRM on board. And today in this part, we're really going to focus on the next bit, really, which is scaling your business. Because if it's going really well and your CRM is, driving revenue for you and your business is starting to grow, your CRM is going to need to grow with you to some degree. So I'm joined again by Steve Baxter from Zoho. Hello, Steve.
Hi there.
Nice to see you again.
And you too.
Yeah, so Steve, before we go into part three, again, for those who, how dare they, didn't be involved in part two and part one, if you could just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and what it is you do at Zoho.
So I'm Enterprise Marketing Manager at Zoho. So my responsibility is helping promote Zoho into larger organizations, sort of mid-market and enterprise. So that is 25 to 250 staff, 250 staff and above. Because we've got a very solid base in the SME sector, but we have the technology for larger organizations. It's just we're not as well known in that sector. So that's what I'm here for.
And you're going to change that, Steve, I'm sure, over the coming years.
In the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. Might take me a few days, but yeah.
What day is it today? But yeah, so great. So yeah, this, like I said, we're going to really sort of focus on this part. About scaling, and I suppose my first question off the bat for you, Steve, is so if I'm a small to medium-sized business right now, should I have the foresight to purchase CRM with scaling in mind, so what it could do for me in the future? And do you find in your experience that most businesses buy a CRM for today, so it's fit for purpose today and don't give it any mind with regards to what they're going to be in 5 years' time with regards to the CRM system?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the effort and, if you like, the danger of not having a scalable system has disappeared, really.
Right. Okay.
In two respects. First of all, I mean, I'm sure we can all remember the old days when our businesses had server rooms in them, and we were responsible for our own IT and our own networks, etc. And then you needed to know that you had hard disks that were big enough and processors that were powerful enough to do everything. Everything's in the everything's in the cloud now. I don't think you'll find any CRM system, if you go out looking today, that isn't either purely on the cloud or doesn't have a cloud version. If you find something that says on-premise, that's the rarity nowadays. So all the IT issues have disappeared. The next issue you have is a system set up for a larger organization? So if you're an SME at the moment and you've basically got a structure where you have someone in charge of sales and then salespeople, that's a fairly small, simple hierarchy.
Yeah.
Do you have a system that can also later on handle a system where you've got maybe 3 tiers in your sales hierarchy, or you've got, if you like, parallel systems? So you've got that hierarchy, but you've also got international sales as well as UK sales, or direct sales and channel sales.
Yes.
And again, none of these concepts from a business point of view are new. In fact, they're very old. So it would be a very unusual CRM system that didn't have the capability to incorporate that kind of system. So to directly answer your question, should you buy a system with scaling in mind? Yes, you should.
Yeah.
But you'd really have to work hard to find a system that couldn't scale.
Okay.
So, it's one of those things. Yes, you should, but it really is fairly standard with most systems. I mean, I don't know the smaller systems that are available on the market. I know Zoho does it very easily, and then obviously you've got the Salesforces and the HubSpots and the Dynamics that do it intrinsically. Perhaps the bigger question is, can you get a system that is both easy to set up while you're small and
Yeah.
then can easily grow when you get larger? Because certainly Salesforce, I know, has got quite a reputation for being an absolute nightmare to set up, as is Dynamics, because
Yes.
it's very difficult to say you have an out of the box version of those. You've basically got to. It's like buying a set of Lego. Really, you've got to build it.
It is. Yeah. There's a lot of development work with
Yeah.
regards to those. Yeah.
So that's where Zoho comes in quite often, in that there is an out of the box solution and it does have the ability to scale. And there are other systems like that as well, mainly from vendors like Zoho, who have a direct sales model, and you can just buy from the web. So in those situations, you have a system that does suit you when you're a small business and can scale later.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's important to know that, isn't it? Because if I'm in a small business right now and I'm thinking in those terms, and I'm sure when you engage with the CRM provider, they will, hopefully educate you that don't worry, as you grow, we can grow with you, and this is what it looks like. So, in my experience, it's exactly as you mentioned. The business starts off with a very simple a simplex kind of hierarchy in terms of just a sales manager and a salesperson, but it grows significantly as a result of that. And then you get curious, don't you, as an individual, and then you have maybe a marketing manager involved, and you start to ask the question, well, what can this actually do for me? What's the power of this? What can I bolt onto it? How do I add automation? How do I get systems to talk to each other? How do I utilize this system to engage with my clients? So it's not manual, it's just an automated process. So that's the bit more I'm interested in, is how do we make sure that we don't overly complicate it, but we show the power of what it can do for you as you move.
You're in danger of tempting me into a sales pitch there.
Well, we'll come to that, Steve, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, let me take a different view to this. Yeah, because what you've raised there is really important, because if you're talking about scalability of your CRM system, you're probably not talking about scalability of CRM. You're talking about its ability to talk to other things as well, because you start wanting to do more sophisticated things as your business grows. Yeah. There's a great organization in the US called the CRM Watch List, who, again, do a podcast all the time on all topics CRM. And they do awards and reviews every year. Should I mention that Zoho just won the best overall score? Oh, I've done that already. But they were making the point that with CRM nowadays, the big issue for organizations of all sizes is not the CRM application. It's the, if you like, the CX, the customer experience platform, the ability to talk easily to other applications.
Yes.
And I say easily because if you get a programmer, you can get anything to talk to anything.
That's right.
But how reliable is that interface going to be when you've got 6 different applications with custom interfaces and one application doesn't update? Guess what? It's broken. So it's how reliable and how easy is that interface. And the sales pitch bit is that's where we really come into play, because Zoho is Zoho wants a suite of 50 applications. They don't all talk to each other, but the key ones for the CRM platform, great communications between the applications. So, quoting that simple example, if you want a service application that logs all tickets for people, so you know exactly what support issues they have, it integrates with your CRM system. That's the kind of thing that everybody should be looking for the future. So even if they don't have a classic example like Zendesk, isn't it? That's a well-known customer service platform. We call our system Desk, the Zendesk. If you're thinking about scaling for the future, you need to be thinking about what other applications are we going to want in the future, and do they talk to our CRM system? That's probably more important than the scalability of the CRM itself, which is almost a given nowadays.
Yeah, I think so. You're right. Looking at them, they're kind of out of the box options, and they scale. More often than not, from a sales perspective, they're positioned in such a way, aren't they? As And when you engage and have conversations with their salespeople, you can see that they say, well, maybe that's not right for you now, but the great salesperson technique to tease it, to be able to say, but if you're thinking about, an outbound marketing strategy, which one provider will talk about an awful lot, then you can think about how this system will start to look a little bit different. But you mentioned a really important point for me, I think, is that do you find that those decisions are usually made in isolation? You find yourself with 3 or 4 different pieces of software, and then you go, oh, hang on a second, how do I get these now to all talk to each other? And then you find out that actually this provider doesn't allow you the opportunity to talk to that system. So do I need to be able to change this system to be able to, or do I look at my CRM? Do you find that happens often?
It happens an awful lot because most businesses do work in isolation, or departments within businesses do work in isolation. And again, it's one of those things where any business has a critical decision to make, and that is, do they want to pick individual applications that are perfect for a particular department, or do they want to pick a platform where they might have to compromise something that, maybe Zendesk has got one particular feature that we don't have in Zoho Desk. I don't know that for a fact, but let's say, for argument's sake, that's true. Is it more important to have that one feature, or is it more important to have something that integrates with CRM and creates one platform that works for the entire business? And I would always say the latter is the better way of doing it, because you've got an integrated suite, and communication between applications now is just so important. So that's a decision that any organization has to make.
Yeah, I think it's particularly with the pace of change, right? Software as a service. Now, most businesses are providing, multiple different platforms that kind of do the same as another platform, but with limited functionality. And I even see now businesses that are providing like a knitting service where their platform will now knit all of your data together and all of your source of information and present it into one kind of analytics view. So you even start to see that now as a result of it.
Yeah, and you've got a great rise of things like Zapier or Zapier. I don't know how you pronounce it properly. Great middleware. I used to use that before I joined Zoho. And it's a great little application. But if you get your IT infrastructure right, your technology structure, you shouldn't need it. You should have applications that natively talk to each other, because if you happen, Zapier is basically your duct tape for IT. It's strapping everything together.
It is.
Wouldn't it be way better if you just had something that bolted together in the first place, or was just one, suite of applications? It's just a more robust way of doing things. And it's I think a better way for most organizations to go.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one as well. And I think you touched upon it in a previous part, that there's probably a misconception for that, especially the small business, that it's a different set of problems, irrespective, the scaling and integration and automation piece. They're probably under a misconception that larger businesses have a different set of problems. I think you touched upon that before, didn't you, Steve, with regards to it, is that it's probably, they'll find it's probably the same.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think I mentioned last time about the Forrester CX event that we went to last week, and it was quite frightening. Frightening, probably not the right word. Illuminating. That they just have exactly the same issues that small businesses do, but they find it even more difficult to change because they've got legacy systems that have been there since 20th century or something like that. That's really difficult to change. Whereas smaller businesses are much more agile in that respect. They have the same issues. Data integrity, we've touched on already. Processes that, one part of the organization doesn't know what the other part is doing, and in fact is, recording data in a different way. If it's the UK arm, they are recording short national phone numbers. The international arm, they are recording phone numbers with country codes. Oh, let's merge our systems. Oh, our data isn't compatible. You get all those kind of issues. You know, you have processes that no one's ever bothered writing down before.
That's right. Or totally unclear.
Yeah, and it's very, very similar, you know, and they have big problems of, you know, there might be a correct way of improving the situation, but you've still got to persuade the people involved that this process is going to be better. And again, that's a harder thing to do in a larger organization than it is in a smaller organization, because you've A, got more people to persuade, and
That's
B,
right.
you've got people with well, their own ego to preserve, basically. And I think that's an even bigger problem in large organizations than it is in small organizations.
Yeah, I found it the same, having been in both, being in that big corporate space as well as, you know, the SME space as well. It's actually really painful,
Yeah,
and that project can, you know, it's almost an analogy of turning a ship, isn't it? It's kind of, it
absolutely. Yeah,
can take, you know, an immeasurable amount of time, and the reason why you maybe have changed it and tried to adopt or adapt something in 12 months time isn't the reason what you wanted to do now. So you realize that actually we're moving it in the wrong direction, because it's
yeah,
actually changed again, and you're
yeah,
constantly going through this, catching yourself up with the priorities that you set out in the first place. Whereas, like you said, I think part of this discussion, which has been really illuminating, to pinch a word from yourself, for me, is that you have a great opportunity as a business without a CRM system to really get this right for the future, by
yeah,
kind of starting in the way you mean to go on, and
yeah,
addressing some of these things. Because when you do find yourself scaling as a business and becoming, you know, doubling in turnover, you've already got those disciplines and you've already got those processes in place to make sure. And it's more the discipline to make sure that when you do change, you're ready for it, and you've
yeah,
got these things in place to some degree. Like you said, legacy problems present a whole headache
yeah,
altogether, don't
yeah.
they, for large businesses?
And when you get to that situation, if you like, return to the subject of this third podcast,
Yeah.
you'll find that scaling isn't a big issue, it's a tweaking issue. So, for
Yeah.
example, we talked a while ago about, I think probably in the first podcast, about why do some people want a CRM system? And sometimes it's to help focus on
Yeah.
the sales leads that really deserve attention. When
Yes.
you're small, and maybe when you first deploy CRM, you'll want a filter that says, show me all of these deals over 50 grand. When you're scaling, you're doing exactly the same thing, but then it's 500 grand, not 50 grand. Those are the
Hopefully.
important ones. You know, so it's fundamentally not changing the CRM system you're using. It's just tweaking the way you use it. I mean, there'll be other changes. I suppose I should have mentioned, you know, every CRM system you buy has different license versions with which allow different numbers of users, or
Yeah.
allow
Yeah.
different numbers of records and that kind of thing. So yes, there'll be costs there, but again, that's not rocket science, and it won't come as any
No.
surprise to anybody.
No.
The other things you'll do is, as the organization gets bigger, you'll have more people. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, somebody who's been one of your good salespeople might get promoted to be a sales manager, which in itself has always struck me as a strange thing, because when someone's a good salesman, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a good sales manager, but often that promotion goes hand in hand, which is
I think
puzzling.
we should maybe have a podcast just on that topic alone. I think
Oh,
that would be
yeah, I
interesting.
know. It's weird. Just because you can kick a football doesn't mean you're a good football manager either. But anyway,
Exactly. There you go.
but I mean, so you need a system again. It's just a change of configuration. So, for example, I have come across, I'm not going to mention it, but a
Nope.
CRM system where it's almost impossible to change the person responsible for an account.
Yeah.
So, you know, a salesperson leaves or salesperson gets promoted, all their accounts needs to be assigned to someone else. That's a typical scaling problem. With this particular CRM system, basically you have to export all your data, re-import it.
Oh.
Complete nightmare. But
Oh.
again, I think that would be an
Painful.
exception. I mean, Zoho
Yes.
and every other system I've ever heard of makes that kind of thing really easy.
Yeah.
Um, Putting in new reporting hierarchies, you'll want to do that kind of thing, so that, you know, again, you might have had that two-stage hierarchy first of all, then you might have instead of sales manager and salespeople, you might have sales director, sales manager UK, sales manager international,
Yes.
sales manager direct, sales manager channel, whatever. You need to be
Exactly.
able to build those kind of reporting hierarchies in. It's all quite simple.
Yeah.
The other one I mentioned a while ago, authorization loops. So
Okay.
now the thing I always put in like that, it's like the situation, you go and buy a car and they say, well, that's going to be 20 grand, and you say, no, I'll give you 18. Oh, I'll just go in the back and talk to the manager, and they disappear off. They think, oh, are we still doing that kind of charade and all the rest of it? I've got to get that authorized. No, you haven't. You can have a bloody cup of coffee and then come back when you think you've waited long enough.
Yeah, double
But no,
glazing.
in some organizations, obviously, you'll have a situation where a salesperson can actually say, that deal is fine, I'll accept that offer. In other situations, as you get bigger, it might be that deals of a certain size or discount levels need to be authorized by
Yes.
someone else in the hierarchy. Again, you want to, as you scale, you might want to build that kind of facility in.
Yeah.
Again, I know we can do that with Zoho. I think practically everybody else can do it as well. This is one of those things. You do need a good CRM system. Everybody, if they're going to deploy CRM, needs a good system, but you
Yeah.
will find enormous commonality between what all of them do. It's not
Yeah.
whether they can do it, it's how they do it. And can you
Yeah.
find a good partner to work with?
It's a language thing, I think, isn't it? In my experience, I've used probably 5 or 6 different CRM systems in my time. For anything from Salesforce right the way down to things like Copper and G Suite. And actually, when you start to notice, there is a commonality across
Yeah,
all of them. It's usually just functionality and language, isn't it? Is that
yeah,
one CRM provider might structure an opportunity and a lead slightly differently, for
yeah.
example.
Hmm.
And what that process, or some CRMs may be more contact driven rather than company driven, or
Yeah,
vice versa. It's just getting into its own little vagaries. But you're right, they do have some commonality with regards to them. So if you start using them and then find yourself in a different business, it's actually not too much of a shock to the system. It's just a bit, some individual vagaries of that CRM system in terms of the comparison between the
yeah.
two. So it's usually that. So okay, so I think what we're coming to in terms of this is that really, in terms of whether you're a 25 million pound turnover or a 1 million pound turnover, it's probably just iteration and change, is it? That is
It
the difference.
is, and the other thing that maybe is a bit of an unpleasant topic is that most businesses do not grow dramatically.
No,
They change by acquisition,
they do. Yeah.
certainly. But if you're a 20 million turnover company, becoming a 200 million pound turnover company is exceptional.
It is.
Normally you'll be, if you're 20 million now, in 5 years time you'll be somewhere between 15 and 30, something like that. So dramatic changes are fairly unusual
That's
if
right.
there hasn't been some kind of acquisition going on at the same
Exactly.
time.
And that
um,
presents its own problem, doesn't it, Steve, in terms of, acquisition, two different systems, to,
oh yeah,
CRM, and now,
yeah,
which one do we choose to go with? And,
yeah,
that level of complexity just changes altogether, doesn't
yeah. That then just becomes a complete nightmare, and that's when it starts becoming more political and technical as well.
it? It does.
um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's an issue. And we have that situation going on with some of our sales guys at the moment. I was talking to one of them a while ago, where it's interesting that the UK company that we're dealing with
Yeah.
has got an extremely efficient operation going based on Soho products, obviously. But they are owned by an American company, and the American company is trying to impose their system, which everybody knows doesn't work as well, but their head office. So we're fighting that battle. But as I
Yeah.
said, it becomes political, not technical at
Yeah,
that
it
point.
does. Yeah, absolutely,
Um,
it does.
yeah, and the other big change as well is that if you start off as an SME, then you start off with essential people. So you've got people building whatever you sell or storing it or whatever. You've got salespeople selling it, and you've
Yeah.
got accounts people making sure all the money comes in, goes out at the right time.
Yeah.
Later on, you might have the marketing people coming on board because you probably
That's
haven't
right.
got those first of all.
Exactly.
Um, and that's when you start looking at different ways of generating new business. And that's where you come back to what we talked about a while ago, and that is interfaces with other systems. So for some reason, one of the things I'm very keen on is marketing automation.
Yes.
The idea that your website has a shop assistant, basically, that if you've got a good shop assistant, they'll say, oh, I've seen you've been looking at that jacket. Did you know these shirts go particularly well with it? Or you've been looking at those trousers. Did you know they're made of sustainable materials or recycled materials or something like that? Marketing automation is basically like that. It turns anonymous visitors on your website into proper leads in a ethical fashion.
Sure.
But a lot of people don't do that. They just have very dumb websites. But when you have that kind of system, then again, you feed the information from and leads from your website directly into your CRM system. So as an organization scales and grows, it's the ability to plug all those systems into your one central customer hub, which will be your
Yes.
CRM system. So we've talked about support systems like Desk in our world. We've talked about marketing automation systems. So it's all that kind of ability to say, I'm starting with CRM, but in future, I want everything else to talk to it.
Absolutely right. I think that's the bit. I think once you start to, I think even in early days as a business, once you are finding that with clients now that I'm having conversations with, once you educate them about what that potential is, and how you can really engage with the customer, make sure that through that life cycle of that customer that they're coming back to you and they're purchasing regularly from you and they're enjoying their experience, how a CRM with a great website, with an outbound marketing strategy, can really start to make your business hum a little bit, and make this feel like it's, take that manual part out of it. Because I think that's the change, isn't it? When you're starting to realize that you're not having to put a manual process in place to engage in that pipeline or in that funnel with your potential client and also your existing customers as well. So I think that's when you start to feel like you're scaling up with CRM, when it's kind of it's almost an automated process that you're going through.
Yeah, and then you'd find yourself in a situation where you are a £30 million business. You go to a conference with your opposite number in a £300 million business, and you're showing them how to do things, and they're turning around to you saying, "God, I wish our X talked to Y," and you say, "Why not?" Sometimes this is why, if you like, my job's exciting, because all of the things that we can do and have done for years for SMEs, we're like turning around to enterprise organizations saying, you could do this as well. It doesn't have to be as hard as you're making it. You're not going to be out there scaling because you're big already. You've just got a lousy technology stack.
You've just got a lousy way of engaging with your customer base and helping your sales force, maximize opportunities as a result of that. So I think that segues really nicely actually into, tell me a little bit about some of the plans for Zoho have got, particularly in the UK market, because I think we talked about it when we first met, Steve. Is that the biggest brand you've never heard of, particularly in the UK market? So tell me a little bit about what Zoho have got planned, particularly here in the UK. What they've got planned over the next 12 months, and maybe what part you're playing in it would be really interesting to hear, actually.
We've got two challenges as we try to move from an organization that sells to the SME sector to an organization that sells to bigger companies. The big one is brand recognition. So there'll be it probably won't start till 2023, but we will be doing a lot of work on that. And in many ways that just comes down to spending money. It's not necessarily all advertising, but it's very difficult to get brand recognition out there without some kind of paid media or paid activities, certainly. So you'll start seeing some of that. The other challenge we have is, in many ways, a lovely challenge to have. That is, what do we promote? Because when you've got a portfolio of about 50 different applications, it's like, we can't promote all of these at once. So we are focusing on what we call our CRM Plus, which is our customer experience platform. So it is many of the applications we've spoken about already. It's CRM at the core, which is 25 years old, probably a little bit more than that. It's our most mature product and our best-selling product. But then it's also that whole platform. It's the service desk application. It's a survey application. It's email marketing application. It's artificial intelligence. Lots of other applications like that all feed into CRM. And the reason we're focusing on that is it's also the better fit for enterprise organizations, because they can all see the need for that.
That's right.
And although changing a CRM system is a big wrench, no one can change from one CRM system to another easily. It's always going to be hard work. It's easier for us to promote that as an idea than it is to promote all of Zoho One, which will be our 50 applications, because that would be, I think, too much of a culture shock initially. Enormously beneficial for an organization, but it's a hell of a big change. So we're focusing on CRM Plus, which is our customer experience platform. Again, we'll be doing it starting off in the traditional way. We'll be doing particular vertical markets. Haven't identified which ones yet, but we will be doing that. And so there'll be a lot of activity based around that, and a lot of new lead generation activity using our own tools, eating our own dog food, as one of my old colleagues used to say. I don't know if it's not too rude an expression, is it? But
no, it's true. It's true though, isn't it? Because you've got you're the arbiter of a platform and multiple platforms that can unlock a business growth. You have that at your own disposal. So, it's the same, I suppose it's the same challenge we find here at Sales Geek, is that, we are, professing to be able to, really, demonstrate that we can change your business and take it to the next level through sales strategy. So if we didn't have our own house in order and able to do that as business owners ourselves, it'd be a bit rich, really. And I suppose that's the same challenge from a Zoho point of view.
So, I mean, the UK is tremendously important to Zoho. I mean, it's our third biggest market, or second or third. The US is the biggest one. We're by far bigger than any other European country, but that's just a linguistic advantage. It's a software application obviously it's built in India, but common language. So it's been easier to sell into the UK than it is to sell into European countries. But we've got our European HQ in Utrecht. We're doing a lot of work to promote more heavily into Europe, which on a personal basis is fantastic. I get lots of trips to Europe. So it's just a question of, promoting our brand into the enterprise space particularly. And then from a marketing point of view, that's a great challenge, because
it is
nowadays the focus has definitely moved away from hyper targeting, much to the annoyance of many people who sell marketing technology, where you can be incredibly targeted, but that doesn't tend to pay particularly. It doesn't tend to work if you're talking about brand promotion, which needs to be far broader. So we'll be doing a lot of work there through a variety of quite original ways of doing it. I think, obviously, I don't know why I'm telling you that, because I can't give you any details. It's sort of teasing you and not giving you the answer.
Steve, that's not great, that, is it?
When you start,
I'll find out eventually.
When you start saying a sentence, you start thinking, I wish I hadn't started that sentence, because I can't finish it off with the proper answer.
It feels like you're promoting a Marvel movie there, where you come on to talk about nothing.
Well, you have heard that Robert Downey Jr. is doing Zoho Man next, obviously. So there you go. The Iron Man franchise is over. Zoho Man, look out.
Well, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you through these 3 episodes, that's for sure. And I hope that the audience and our audience really kind of started. We just kind of scratched the surface of it, really. But definitely reach out to Steve, through any kind of his social channels, or, hunt him down, because I'm sure he can help you out if you have specific questions with regards to Zoho, or you want some, helpful advice with regards to CRM. I'm sure Steve will be happily take any questions, that's for sure.
Would do, absolutely.
But absolute pleasure. And I hope that the audience has learned a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the potential opportunities as well when bringing a CRM on board. So thanks very much, Steve. I really appreciate you giving me this time, and I look forward to hopefully doing something again with you in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to, because this has been great fun. So thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye.